Morning, everyone. Welcome to Inside Tennessee. I'm your moderator, John North. John Becker is away. This morning, we've got two guests, Knoxville City Council members, Andrew Roberto and Lauren Ryder. We appreciate them coming. We want to talk about them as their terms come to an end. Before we get to that, though, we want to greet our panelists. That man on the end there is Don Bosch. He's a Democrat and attorney. Don, how you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing well, John. Thank you.
Good, sir. And there's Eddie Smith. He's a Republican, former lawmaker, and now with Child Help. Eddie, how are you?
I'm great. John, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well, sir. I'm doing well. Thank you very much. Our two guests this morning are term limited, and we want to talk a little about that, and also about the election, which just concluded. And let me start, if I may. Lauren, you're District 4. Andrew, you're District 2. How's it been? You're about done. You told me off camera you guys are done officially December 20th. You've done 2 terms. Lauren Ryder, how's it been?
It's been busy. It's very hectic. It's quite the juggling act because as a council member, local legislator, you cover the gamut. It's a lot of different things. But also there's a lot of things you don't get to control because you're below the state, below the federal government, and also there's the county government. So just kind of hectic. We do a lot of directing people to other bodies when it's not something that's our purview. But just kind of a lot of customer service to a lot of people across the city.
Last few terms, certainly it has appeared where the legislature feels like they need to tell local government what they should be doing. I don't think that's an editorial comment. Andrew, what about it? How's it been for you? You're coming on the end of your second term.
I've really enjoyed the opportunity to serve, and I think one of the things you have to be prepared for is just how much constituent contact you're going to have. And so certainly in the 2nd District, I hear from folks all the time. And a lot of what council does is connect you to services. So there's a lot of, I need my recycling picked up. I need a new trash can. I need my leaves picked up.
There's something in the road that I need fixed.
Something in the road.
Yeah.
And you've got to connect folks to the right people. But there's a lot that goes on, just like, Councilmember Ryder was just saying. There's a lot coming at you all the time, so you really got to be focused and pay attention to everything that's coming on. And there's some things that are outside of your control, too.
7-day-a-week position?
It does not. It will take up as much time as you allow it to.
Yeah.
Don? Eddie?
Well, I really want to just kind of start. Here we said 8 years later that you all have served, but it's been a very unusual 8 years because you have the before COVID, the during COVID, and the after COVID. So what's been your experience and what's it been like because you all have served in a very unique time?
I think things were, to me, in terms of serving people and connecting with people across the district, seemed more cohesive. Obviously, that first part before COVID happened. And then we were just kind of out of sorts. Like, how do we help people? How do we, when you can't gather? The neighborhood meetings, those are kind of the backbone of how we talk with our constituents. Because we're not like a state legislator that leaves town and comes back and forth. We're able to go to these neighborhood meetings almost every single night a week. We would be at a neighborhood meeting. And it took a lot of the neighborhoods 2+ years to kind of get back online and be regular with the meetings. And so our second 4 years to me was quite strange because we just weren't having that kind of contact. Emails and phone, of course, but you weren't having that daily interacting with people the way we had for the whole first 4 years that we had served.
Andrew, let me put a spin on Eddie's question. What was the thing the city did right during COVID and the thing that we probably did the poorest or did wrong, in your opinion?
Well, I think the thing we did right was continuing to, move forward. We had meetings. We had to have them on Zoom, which was unique. My colleague is the beer board chair now. I was beer board chair at the time, and so you had to have roll call votes in beer board every time you did anything.
We joked about something you guys did, and that was allow alcohol to go from the restaurants when you pick up your food.
Well, we had a lot of things that we had to make changes to because of the environment that we were in. But I think the main piece is that we kept going. Nothing stopped. We kept moving. And what I was talking about before with the conversations, I heard from a lot of business folks at the time about struggles that they were having with what was going on, and so I was trying to connect them to be able to talk to the folks that were making those decisions.
What did we do wrong as a community?
I think in retrospect, we probably would look back and say that we didn't know what was going on with the virus at the time. I mean, there was a lot of speculation about, how the virus was spreading, and everyone was, Cloroxing down their groceries and things like that. So, when you don't know what you don't know, and we can look back on it now and say, hey, we could have done this better. But at the time, I think the best decisions that could be made were trying to be made at that time and just moving forward.
I'm curious, there was a difference philosophically among many county leaders versus city leaders in how to respond to that. Did that affect you? Did you think about that? Did that feel noticeable to you, Lauren?
Yeah, there was a lot more angst directed at county commission than us. We were meeting online. They were meeting in person, so they served a bigger outlet for people to come and bring their frustrations to. I think we got less of that because we had a lot of constituency that felt they didn't need to leave their house and it wasn't safe to. I know people in the community that still have hesitancy with crowds and meetings. If they're immunocompromised, that type of thing, because it's just one additional thing to get sick with for them. And so it was certainly stark, the difference in people's opinions, and it just this contrast of us meeting on Zoom and them meeting in person. And I will say what was super strange about that is we had people sworn in. Tommy Smith was sworn in, and I think he had one meeting in person.
Wow.
It was something really minimal. But we had colleagues that we really didn't get to interact with for over a year who were new to the body, and we were the Brady Bunch in squares.
Yeah, well, I remember those Brady Bunch
it
meetings.
It was really, really strange and, and lonely for everybody. I will say I think that's one of the impacts to everyone, not just Knoxville, but the loneliness and talking about loneliness epidemic and everything. A lot of people got isolated, and like I said, those neighborhood meetings served a big role in a lot of people's lives, and some of them still haven't quite built up to the following that they had before. So, yeah, I don't think we got yelled at as much during that time because we were on Zoom.
Andrew?
About that topic, anyway.
Yeah.
I just think that what I remember is neighborhoods that were, doing work with their fellow neighbors and saying, hey, this person needs us to help them with some groceries. So there was a lot of that kind of going on. But I mean, I've lived in this community my whole life, and so I've seen that. I mean, this community really does want to reach out and help folks, and
it's been that way.
It's always been that way. I've experienced that myself, but it's really a special place to be, and to see that in action in a time when there was a lot of unknowns and people were very scared about what was going on. The other thing I'd say that we still live with today that was starting then was really this affordability stuff that's been going on, where things really, we saw the limits of the supply chain
kind of blew up.
We saw how things became less and less affordable, and that's just kind of sped up from there, unfortunately.
We're going to take a break now, but we're going to continue our conversation after we return from the break. You're watching Inside Tennessee. Welcome back. We are talking to two members of Knoxville City Council. These are the last days they're in office. They're term limited, Lauren Ryder and Andrew Roberto. I'm just going to put you on the spot. Are either of you going to run for mayor of Knoxville?
I think you're putting one on the spot more than the other, but go ahead.
Well, I'm certainly a question that I've heard over the last several years several times. It's one that's kind of heated up here more recently, so yeah. It's not necessarily a surprise that somebody might say something like that. I've really enjoyed my time on City Council and with the service. I'd like to be able to serve in the future in some role. I'm not making any kind of commitments to doing anything right now. I'm excited about finishing my term, and really what I need to concentrate on after I roll off on council is spending some time with my wife and my daughter, because they have sacrificed a lot during this time, and I've been away a lot, and so I really am looking forward to spending a lot of time with them.
By the way, as we're taping this, it's Andrew's birthday, so happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
Question.
So I'm going to change gears a little bit. You all have been on City Council during what I've been in this community a very long time, but what I've seen is probably the most tumultuous and contentious time as it relates to the Knoxville Police Department. You've seen at least 2 leadership changes. I believe Chief Roush probably was there when both of you started, and then Chief Eve Thomas, and now Chief Paul Noel. We've seen a lot of strife in our community. I'm curious to what it was like when you started, and what do you think it is today? And I'll start with you, Lauren.
Well, the George Floyd moment really changed things, and that's a national thing. There's a lot of people that had those feelings and sentiments prior to that, all over the world, and particularly in our country, and that kind of inflamed things. So it's certainly different now. And
Different, better or worse?
I think Chief Noel does a good job, and I think we have a good police chief, and I think we have a good police force. One of the things that was going on when we got on council that is now kind of buttoned up is we were short 100 police officers for a very long time, and it was a constant struggle. As soon as you get new ones in the door, people would retire. We had a force that the majority of them could retire. And we are now churning out recruits and having 3 new recruit classes a year. We went a couple of years with no recruit classes under Chief Roush, and so it took a long time to catch up. And what I will point out to people, number one, I think our police force is asked to do a lot of things. It's not police work. They are asked to be social workers, day in, day out, and that is not exactly what they're trained to do, and they've got more training to do that. Secondly, we have the same authorized strength number for KPD as we did, I believe, under Victor Ashe. So if you want to do the calculation, that's a long time. And how much has the population changed in that time? So when people say, I don't have police coming down my street responding to, my needs like speeding, how can we take that same number of police? But we were short 100. So you can change the number all day long. And we budgeted for it. You just couldn't fill the ranks because you keep bringing them in, they would retire. You bring them in, they would retire. So I think Chief Noel and his staff and his leadership under him have brought us to a good place. And I think we're trying to work on some of those social services that they keep being addressed to do, and that a lot of that falls to our homelessness. We have a lot of challenges in the community, and not all of them fall under the umbrella of city leadership.
So, Andrew, your thoughts from when you started and to where it's at now?
Well, when I started, I was really surprised to see that we weren't at full strength with KPD, and we've really had struggled with that over time. But we've gotten to the point now where we're going to be at that 416 strength level if every graduate in the academy right now was to graduate, which they won't, but we'll get close. That's really important because we did have a period of time where we could have had 100 police officers retire, and we would have been down a huge number of officers. So we just have to, continuing to do that, looking at what the strength we need. But then I also think we've done some creative things that are really important, especially around mental health. So we've got judicial diversion that we've been doing now, which has successfully moved to 2,000 folks that are nonviolent outside of the judicial system, and that's the BHUC. We've also got Empath, which is, moving people from diversion from the ER that are in mental health crisis. And, we've got the co-response team, which is really important. Most of those calls that they respond to are suicidal ideation, right? And most of the folks that they're dealing with stay in place. They don't go to an emergency room. They get connected with care. So those are really important things. I think we've seen that, we were talking about the pandemic before. There was a big surge in mental health issues coming from that, and addressing that in a responsible way like we've been doing with the co-response team and some of these other diversions, I think is really important.
And I want to ask you both, because you're both about to pass the baton to your successor. We've talked about COVID, all that you've learned. During that, we started talking about in the last blog, one of the things is the rise of people moving here, housing getting more expensive. A lot of things that have happened, you've got a lot of information. What would you give your advice to the successor as you all prepare to hand that baton to the next person who will sit on City Council?
Well, I'd say that you're raising a very good point about affordability. So I mean, I've lived in Knoxville my whole life, and so I've seen us go from a very affordable place to live to not a very affordable place to live right now. And what you see is that our workforce is getting pushed outside of the city because it's not affordable for them. So I'm talking about firefighters, nurses, teachers, police officers, service workers. They can't afford to live in our community and they get pushed out. Well, one of the things that we all experience every day is traffic. Well, if you have all your workforce working further away, the commute times get worse, the congestion gets worse. So we really need to work harder at having workforce housing here in our community. We have programs that are successful with doing that. We've got tax financing structures that we can use, and we've used them. Over the last 8 years, we've built 700 workforce units, and that's a really important piece of our attainable housing that we need to make sure we're doing. But we got to make sure that Knoxville remains a place for workers to be able to live and enjoy their lives too, and we can then reduce what we're seeing in the traffic as well.
Lauren?
Well, I'm not going to give a really divergent answer from that, as the affordability thing is hugely tied to housing. This week I actually so for our colleagues that are coming in behind us, they are really going to have to focus on housing, how our land is used. We have a lot of land and property in Knoxville that's just not in play. It's not being used, and it's empty and vacant, and it's been that way for a while. Over our corridors, we changed the zoning so you could do mixed use there. And it's not flying off the shelves. Even though I think the demand for housing is there, I think it's hard to balance out the equation of financing to make the mixed use. We don't have the density to support both pieces of it, and that's the struggle. This week in particular, I went and looked at some houses that are coming up for auction. There's, for example, a landlord that's getting out of the business. They said they're going to be selling 80 of his properties. And I went and looked at several of them. And they are all very low income. And they don't have a place to go. And I'll be talking to some folks at the city because these people need resources. But, that's the thing, is we have a lot of old housing stock here. And that's where some of our low income individuals live, our service workers, our elderly, people with children. They were there while people were touring the houses to buy them, and they're not going to have a place to go. We just don't have the housing to support them, and it's very sad. And that is one thing the city has focused on, is they call it NOAA. It's naturally occurring affordable housing. So those are those houses that are there. And that's what I saw, were houses that are like 50 plus years old. They haven't been kept up. They're in bad disrepair. Many of them need to be demolished because they're so far gone. And that is what a lot of people who have low means live in the city, and that is an immense challenge. And we've been working on that by doing the Affordable Housing Fund and funding new developments, and a lot has come online, but it's barely what we need.
Something we'll be watching in the future. Lauren Ryder, Andrew Roberto, many thanks for stopping by this morning. We really do appreciate it. And whatever you do, we wish you the very best. And by the way, we'll have some of the other departing council members on here later on. We've got to take a break, but we'll be back, talk a little bit more national politics. All right, we've talked local politics. Now let's shift to the national scene, because we had quite a lot happen this week, and we want to squeeze a good bit in. Let's start with a shutdown. We finally saw Congress decide to come back and resolve their differences. Your thoughts on winners, losers, Eddie?
I think one of the biggest losers, honestly, is Chuck Schumer, because he had a huge bunch of his party defect to come over to the Republicans and say, let's get this opened back up. I do think
it was 8, Eddie.
It was 8. But you know what? It got the government opened back up. So, I think Schumer is probably the biggest loser in all of this. Honestly, I think the biggest winner right now is the American public, because the government is back open and things should be starting to go back to normal like people expect.
Well, if we make sure we don't look at this from a myopic standpoint, I think the government had to open back up, and I think those Democrats had to come over and get the government to open up. But they have set a very, very clear table, so to speak, that if the Republicans do not come forward and allow a meaningful dialogue and a meaningful discussion about the affordable health care subsidies that are not back in place, people's insurance policies are going to double, triple, that we're already seeing that. If they don't do that, they are toast with their electorate.
It seems fair to be suspicious that that's exactly what's going to happen.
I know, and from a long term, and I say a long term nowadays, 6 months is long term. We just seen in this last set of elections with the Democrats doing so well in 25 after doing abysmal in 24. 6 months from now, the Republicans could be the most reviled bunch of folks and bunch of legislators that they have ever seen really in the last 8 to 12 years.
We've got about a minute and a half left, and so let's shift now to talking about, this is a topic that won't go away, at least as far as the Democrats are concerned. They appear not to want to let it go away. That's the Epstein files. We had a couple things that were interesting that developed late last week, one being the Democrats clearly had been sitting wanting to release some interesting emails regarding or about or that included Donald Trump. Jeffrey Epstein's communicating with various people, including Ghislaine Maxwell. Don, thoughts on that, and then we'll hear from Eddie.
Well, I think the timing, there is some politics involved in the timing, but let's not forget, this is not a partisan issue. This is about young women, children, that were victims and victimized by very rich, influential, important people, whether they're Democrats, Republicans, or none of the above. And we need to get to the bottom of this, and we need to know who was involved. We need to protect these now grown women, some of which have committed suicide over this matter. We need to get to the bottom of this. This needs to clear. Trump said he would do it. He ran on that, and now he's just gone back on it, and he's a coward running from this issue.
Eddie, got about 20 seconds.
Hate to agree with Don, but I'm going to. This is an issue where I think it's time to get it out, and sometimes sunshine is the best disinfectant. Let's see what's in there and let the chips fall where they may. Again, it's not a Republican-Democrat issue. This is about making sure that we do not allow victims to continue to be victimized when they've already been horribly preyed upon.
There have been some key Republicans in the House who have signed on to and support the idea of pushing for the release of everything. We'll see what happens next. That's not a simple process. We've got to take one more commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the late, great Howard Baker. We're back. The late, great senator from Tennessee, Howard Baker, would have turned 100 years old yesterday, Saturday. There have been several festivities going on in East Tennessee to honor him, as well as in Nashville. We spoke to him, to his daughter, rather, Sissy, by Zoom earlier this week, and couldn't help but ask her what her thinking was about her father and how he would have handled both the shutdown and sort of the current state of dysfunction that occurs right now in Congress. Let's listen to what she says.
First of all, Dad could never get elected today. He was a moderate, and he crossed the aisle, and he compromised. And I doubt he would ever have allowed the government to shut down for 41 days, because he would have called, Republican and Democratic senators into his office, which was also my grandfather Dirksen's office in the Capitol. He took it over. He would call them in, and I could just hear him right now. They would sit down, and he would say, "Boys, we've got to fix this."
It's great talking to Sissy Baker, and she had a lot to say about him. We have the complete conversation that we are streaming through our app. I'd encourage you to listen to it or watch it. Eddie, your thoughts on Howard Baker, what Sissy said, his contributions, you name it.
Howard Baker will go down as one of the greatest senators that this state and honestly this country has had. I wish we could get back to more people like Howard Baker that were running for office. Sadly, I think we've gotten locked into a time in politics where we can't disagree anymore. We have to destroy each other. And I'm really hoping that some people will get elected that will start pulling us back from that precipice, because I think it's dangerous for the country.
Don, we got about 30 seconds. Your thoughts?
Well, Eddie's right. We need more Howard Bakers on both sides of the aisle.
Amen.
We've had several from the Democrat side go through this state. I think of just the good job that Senator, then Vice President Gore did while he was senator. So, but we had a balance in Tennessee of Republicans and Democrats governing, and they were moderates. That day is gone, unfortunately, for this state, and I don't know how we get back there. That's the one thing that worries me. We'll survive it no matter what, but it's going to be a very difficult road back to moderation in government.
Don Bosch, Eddie Smith, thank you so much for being with us this morning, and thanks to you all for watching. We'll be back next Sunday. We look forward to seeing you then. Take care.